Remember how I've complained in the past about how certain episodes in this show suffer from having plots that are far too basic? Well, Rarity Takes Manehattan suffers from the opposite problem. The plot is too complex. There is really too much going on to keep track of, and it was difficult to get a handle on what the real idea of this story was. But I'm reviewing it, so I'll do my best. The first thing I noticed is that Rarity is exploiting Spike once again, and seeing how exploitation is one of the themes of this episode, I was kind of disappointed this issue wasn't addressed. What's worse is that this is basically all he does in this episode. I know I've complained in the past about Spike's mysterious absence from certain episodes. Case in point, the last Rarity episode before this. But seriously, writers, what you did in Look Before You Sleep by just explaining his absence was fine. If a character isn't needed for a story, then just don't have them in it. I think having him in it and not doing anything is actually more distracting. It does seem like what Spike said of his Power Pony's character is becoming more true of him in the real world. He is only there for comic relief. Also odd that, as was the case in Just for Sidekicks, gems are being used as currency. Why do this when it's been clearly established in the past that ponies use bits as currency? The song made me realise something for the first time. As much as I've always loved the job Tabitha St. Germain does as Rarity's voice, as well as Suri Polomare in this episode, I think I love what Kazumi Evans does as her singing voice even more. And she was well overdue a good outing, as her last song was almost 2 seasons ago. The idea of the song, however, is not something I loved quite so much. I know that there have been a lot of complaints from some fans, though I wasn't one of them, about how Rarity doesn't represent her element of generosity very well. So it was pretty obvious to me that this song was an attempt by DHX to say, look, she is the element of generosity after all. Couple that with the moment later in the episode that addresses the same complaint regarding Applejack, and this is a pretty clear bit of fan service. Now, I don't really mind that as an idea, it just seemed a bit too, how can I put this, on the nose. The way that Rarity actually says generosity a number of times in the song, and Rainbow says Applejack's element out loud, there was no real subtlety to either of these moments. They just flat out told us what the purpose of these scenes were. Still, I've never really agreed with this complaint about Rarity anyway, so I guess I'm okay with any attempt to address it. Now to the moment that I just knew from the first time I saw it the fans were going to throw up their arms in outrage about. Twilight gets rudely denied a cab despite the fact she is an Alicorn princess. 2 things you need to keep in mind here. Twilight isn't wearing her crown, so there is no way they could have known she was a princess. And as for the fact she is an Alicorn, I think it's very possible that they just didn't notice the wings, what with them being tucked away. Also, does her being an Alicorn necessarily mean anything on its own? Sure, the only Alicorns we know of are all princesses, but that doesn't mean an Alicorn must also be a princess. For all we know, there may be Alicorns out there that are just normal citizens. And even if being an Alicorn does mean you are a princess, is that fact necessarily going to be common knowledge to every pony in Equestria? I don't know, blame Magical Mystery Cure for not properly explaining this. But even if I am willing to accept that this doesn't make much sense, I think I still prefer it that Twilight is being treated like a normal citizen. We've had Equestria Girls and the season premiere to focus on Twilight the Princess. What's wrong with having a bit of a focus on Twilight as just a normal pony now? I'm not saying that they should just forget about the fact that she is a princess altogether, but I think it is important to get a good balance between the two. What exactly are you guys that want more of a focus on her being a princess asking for? Are you suggesting she should be treated like Princess Kate with people flocking her wherever she goes, her constantly having to attend social events and meet people? You know, having no time to just live a normal life and hang out with her friends? Is that what you want? Now, after the rather blunt way that the song reminded us that Rarity is generous, I do like the more subtle way that they showed us that good deeds will be returned, but at the same time you shouldn't expect anything in return. It would have been very easy to have this cab driver say something like, after the way you fixed my will, it's the least I can do to return the favour. But he doesn't, they let us figure that out for ourselves. That was awesome, DHX, thank you. So then we are introduced to Suri Polomare, the antagonist, and once again I have to give the writers credit for being fairly subtle here with her introduction. There is nothing about this character in her first scene that led me to believe that she might be the antagonist, aside from maybe her voice, which I love by the way. So it makes sense to me that Rarity would be willing to give her some of her fabric after she helped her put her things away, and trust that she wouldn't try to exploit this. Especially since she knew her and therefore must have had decent experiences with her in the past. Though there are a couple of minor things here that bug me, like how Polomare knew Rarity's description of the fabric word for word, and why would she say it's every pony for herself after they previously established that good deeds will be rewarded? But I guess that is the kind of complex theme in this episode, that good deeds will be rewarded and you should try and help others when you can, but there are also those that will try and exploit those good deeds. It's an idea that's a little hard to get your head round at first, and I'm not sure this episode really conveys it as well as it could have done. It almost seems like it's sending a mixed message. I think it's this next scene that makes it really difficult for me to get a handle on what this episode is trying to convey. The other 5 all agree to help Rarity out and put together a new line of outfits, only to find that this means missing Hinny of the Hills, a show they wouldn't even have tickets for if not for Rarity. They are reluctant to help, despite the fact that they came to Manehattan to help Rarity in any way they could, and the tickets cost them nothing. Yet it is Rarity that is vilified by flipping out when they are reluctant to help. Personally, I don't blame her for reacting this way. I know this was probably something they'd been looking forward to for a while, so I can see why it would hurt to have to cancel seeing it at the last second. But this is your friend's career on the line here. It's not like you actually have to see this musical, or that you will never have the chance to see this musical again. If Rarity was able to get tickets once, who's to say she can't get them again? Would you even be able to enjoy the musical if you went to see it under these circumstances, knowing that you just abandoned the friend that is the reason why you were watching it in the first place? If they had just had the other 5 apologise at the end of this, I think it would have been fine. It's like in All's Well That Ends Well. Spike is clearly the one that had to learn something at the end of that episode, but they still had Twilight apologise because she was a little in the wrong as well. Obviously Rarity is overreacting because she is stressed by the pressure of getting the outfits done, and she figures out for herself that she was wrong. See, that's how you do flawed character behaviour right. You have them learn what they did wrong, and then make things right. Though with that said, Twilight's line does convey exactly what I was thinking. They are good enough friends now that a small thing like this doesn't change anything. I've had arguments with friends like this many times during my life, but it's pretty much always forgotten about the next time I see them, because being sorry and being forgiven for it is just a given. It doesn't even need to be said. I got really excited when Rarity said she was going to be staying in Manehattan. Wow, are they actually going to write out one of the main characters for a bit? It's also bringing up something about Rarity that I've been aware of for a while, but this show hasn't really given any attention until now. That Rarity is ultimately going to have to make a choice between her friends and her career. But I thought Suri's plan was a bit dumb. Why would the judges assume that Rarity had forfeited just because she hadn't claimed her prize? And even if they did think that, wouldn't they at least make an effort to find out why she had forfeited? I like the idea that Coco Pamel was inspired by Rarity's actions, but I think it would have been better if she'd been given a bit more background on why she hadn't done anything to stand up to Suri before. I know that there was that quick line about how long she'd worked for her, but I don't really know if that was enough. During the episode, it never really looked like she agreed with Suri's attitude or approved of what she was doing. However, I do hope that we get to see this character again at some point, because inspiration is another thing about Rarity's character that I've really wanted to see them explore. I also thought the visuals of Manehattan in this episode was stunning. It looked just like a bona fide Manhattan, and made for one of the best new locations we've had since the Crystal Empire. It gives the episode a unique look and feel. You could take a still from pretty much any scene in this episode and instantly know it was from Rarity Takes Manehattan. And of course, I can't end this review without talking about the rainbow thread. Like I said in last week's review, I hope that this is leading to something and that these endings are not just teasers for the sake of it. But right now, there doesn't seem to be any kind of connection between them. The best theory I have is that it's something to do with the box. See, with there being 6 keys, I'm guessing there is one for each element. Rarity acquired the thread by displaying her element of generosity. So maybe if she uses the thread generously, she will acquire the generosity key maybe? Just a guess. Overall, this is a hard episode to get a proper grasp on. I think they made some of the ideas a bit too complex for a 20-minute episode, what with the ideas of good deeds being rewarded but also exploited. And the behaviour of the other 5 really annoyed me. But Rarity shows once again why she is best pony. The song and the reprise are both great and the visuals are stunning. So I think there is more to like here than not, and I think this does just about beat Too Many Pinkie Pies as Dave Polsky's best outing to date. It's just a bit too complicated. Sure, the only other cons we know of are all princesses. Sure, the only other cons we know of are all princesses. Sure, the only other cons we know of are all princesses. The only other cons we know of are all princesses. And she figures out for herself that what she did... Keep reading it wrong. I like the idea that Coco...